You! Step back from the gate! Now!" The voice cut through the music like a blade. Officer Kellen's hand hovered near his holster as he approached the elderly black woman standing quietly with a wrapped gift in her arms. Officer Briggs flanked him, face unreadable, but body language unmistakably hostile. The woman blinked slowly, adjusting the weight of her cane. "I have an invitation," she said gently, lifting the card with trembling fingers. Kellen didn't look. He scoffed. Could have been printed off a Google Doc. Then he snatched the gift from her arms. "What's in here?" he demanded, shaking the box like it owed him answers. She reached for it instinctively, but Briggs stepped in and placed a firm hand on her shoulder. "Ma'am, you need to leave now." The grip wasn't aggressive, but it was ownership, control, the kind that says, "You don't belong here." Guests nearby turned, whispering. "Is she lost?" someone muttered. "Maybe she's crashing the event," said another. But then a teen filming from behind a hedge, Deshawn whispered, "That's the groom's grandma." A woman near the gate gasped. "Wait, is that—" Still calm, still composed, the grandmother straightened her back and looked Kellen in the eye. "Son," she said softly, "you're making a mistake. You can't walk back." As she adjusted her shawl, a silver badge glinted briefly under her collar, seen only by one quiet witness in the crowd. "If you believe no one should be judged by their appearance, especially by those in power, hit the like button now and subscribe. Type justice in the comments and tell us where you're watching from." This story delivers the most powerful instant karma you'll see all year. It wasn't today, it was that day. Quiet, forgettable to anyone else, but not to her. Evelyn Grace was just trying to find the perfect ribbon, the kind her grandson would remember, even after the wedding gifts had been unwrapped and forgotten. The sun was low over the shopping plaza when a squad car crept beside her. No siren, no greeting, just suspicion wrapped in a badge. "Ma'am, can I see your bag?" Officer Kellen asked, flat and cold. She complied. Of course she did. She always had. But it wasn't about the contents. It never was. It was about the fact that Evelyn Grace existed in a place they didn't think she should. Born in Birmingham, Alabama, Evelyn was raised where fire hoses met faith and silence was a survival skill. She knew what it meant to be underestimated. She'd raised 3 children alone while running a halfway house for war veterans. Men society wanted to forget. She never asked for praise. She asked for policies, and she got them. Years ago, Evelyn sat on an ethics reform board that rewrote how officers were trained. 2 precincts were shut down on her signature alone, but she never told her family. Her power was quiet, intentional. She buried a husband who came home from war with more silence than memory. She raised a son who became a defense attorney. And now her grandson Jordan was about to walk into a new chapter, with her watching from the front row. No one was going to taint that moment. No one. Evelyn moved slower now, but her mind was exact. She wore flats, not to be unnoticed, but to stay grounded. She didn't interrupt. She listened. And when people looked at her and saw nothing, that was their weakness, not hers. But even today, with the choir warming up behind the church and petals being placed for tomorrow's vows, she felt it again. That look, that dismissal. And this time, it wasn't in a dark alley. It was in broad daylight, with cameras rolling, with guests watching. But Evelyn wasn't here to bow. Not this time. "I used to teach officers how to de-escalate situations," she whispered to the woman beside her who offered her a seat. She said it casually, sipping her water. The woman chuckled, until Evelyn's eyes didn't. And the officers? Kellen, loud and sure. Briggs, always following. Dana, the silent nodder. They weren't just doing their jobs. They were following a script Evelyn had seen her whole life. But this time, they picked the wrong role, because seconds later, a woman named Abigail walked in without an invitation. No check, no question. Briggs tipped his hat. "Welcome, ma'am." "Evelyn Grace?" She was still waiting on clearance. Have you ever felt misjudged before? People even knew who you were? Tell us in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. People like you think rules don't apply once you put on pearls. The words slithered out of Officer Kellen's mouth, soaked in arrogance and delivered with a smirk. He stood just inches from Evelyn Grace, towering over her like he was ready to make an example out of her existence. His hand hovered near his. Duty belt, not for safety, but to remind her who had the authority. Evelyn didn't flinch. She simply lifted the cream-colored invitation again, her fingers steady now. It's addressed, "I'm here for my grandson." Kellen didn't look. He turned to the gathering guests instead. "She doesn't belong here. We've got no confirmation. She's even on the list." "She probably printed it herself," Briggs chimed in, louder than necessary. Not one person corrected them. Not one guest intervened. Near the catering table, a sharply dressed man in a dark suit, Wesley, lifted his phone, casually tapping something. He wasn't here for cake or vows. His eyes never left the officers. Across the courtyard, a woman near the choir loft caught his nod, returned it, and disappeared into the back. They moved like shadows, intentional and unseen. Some guests watched from behind their champagne flutes, like Clara in the blue dress. Others, like Ben, filmed quietly with their phones down low. Everyone saw. No one moved. One guest, white and sunburned, leaned to his partner. "Maybe she's just confused, but you never know with folks from her neighborhood." The woman nodded slightly. No challenge, no objection. Assumption settled into silence. Then came the moment. "Officer." Briggs stepped forward. "If you don't vacate this space, we'll escort you ourselves." He didn't wait. He nudged her cane with the toe of his boot. Subtle, deliberate, humiliating. Evelyn's balance shifted, but she gripped the bench tighter. She didn't fall, but the moment hit harder than any shove. Across the lawn, a young, black man, Andre, cousin to the groom, took a step forward, then stopped. His fists clenched, but his eyes darted to the uniforms, the crowd, the invisible line drawn between courage and consequence. And the groom? Jordan hadn't arrived. So Andre stepped back. And silence won again. Evelyn slowly turned her head toward Kellen, her gaze sharpened into steel. "You might want to double-check your timeline, officer," she said, voice quiet, but cutting. "Because when the groom walks in and sees this..." She didn't finish. She didn't have to. Kellen blinked. "What would you do if someone challenged you publicly based only on assumption?" Drop your response in the comments. "I've asked politely," Officer Kellen boomed, his voice slicing through the music and murmurs like a serrated blade. "Now I'll make it official. You're trespassing." His hand dropped to his belt, not to draw a weapon, but close enough to make sure everyone noticed. Guests froze mid-laugh. Forks hovered halfway to mouths. Even the cellist in the string quartet missed a note. The wedding rehearsal had stopped breathing. Evelyn Grace remained seated. Her fingers gently cradled her purse while her cane rested beside her. She looked up at Kellen with an expression forged from decades of restraint. "I'm not trespassing," she said, steady. "No, ma'am," Kellen replied, voice syrup thick with sarcasm. "You're testing." But the tension in his voice betrayed him. He expected rage. He got presence, and it rattled him. Behind a column of white lilies, Wesley tapped a button on the inside of his sleeve cuff. Nothing seemed to happen, except the discreet camera mounted near the gazebo blinked red. No one noticed, but it noticed everything. "I swear I've seen that." "Woman before?" a bridesmaid Lena whispered. "In a government photo, maybe?" Her friend scoffed. "She looks more like someone's nanny." They laughed, soft, uneasy, wrong. Andre, still watching from a distance, clenched his jaw. His fingers curled into fists at his sides. He looked to where the groom should have been standing. Still no Jordan. Sasha, a local journalist, raised her phone a little higher. Her breath caught between obligation and fear. Whispers stirred the courtyard like wind in dry grass. "She's making a scene." Something feels off. The way she's just sitting there. Leans were being drawn. One subtle, one loud. Neither with mercy. But Evelyn didn't move. She adjusted her shawl, folded her hands, looked out over the faces that judged her without knowing her name. That stillness? It wasn't passive. It was strategy. A waiter, Marcus, passed by with a tray of drinks. He paused behind Evelyn, then placed a water bottle beside her. No words, just dignity. Briggs clocked the move. He said nothing, but his scowl was loud. Evelyn moved her hand ever so slightly, adjusting her lap. For just a moment, a small silver badge flashed beneath the edge of her scarf. Sergeant Dana, standing nearby, caught it. He didn't speak. But he shifted, shoulders straighter, eyes narrower. His posture betrayed recognition and concern. Kellen clapped his hands twice, hard. All right, folks, enough rubbernecking. This is a security matter. He pointed straight at Sasha. No more filming. But behind him, 3 phones were already up. One from the balcony, 2 more by the floral arch. He couldn't stop the truth from circling now. Inside Evelyn's clutch, a green light pulsed once. Then again. The drone above the courtyard caught it. So did Wesley. He tilted his head, slightly. Game time was near. I think she's doing this for attention, Pamela whispered nearby. A few guests chuckled, soft and forced. It wasn't funny. It never was. But ridicule was easier than courage. Sergeant Dana finally stepped forward, his voice low and dismissive. If she doesn't leave, we'll remove her ourselves. End of story. But that wasn't the end. That was the trigger. Andre stepped forward again. She's family, he said. Briggs intercepted him. Back off. This doesn't concern you. The lie echoed louder than the truth. Evelyn watched, closely, not fearful, measuring. That's when Marina, Jordan's cousin, walked up. Her heels clicked gently on the cobblestones as she approached Evelyn and rested a hand on her shoulder. She's the reason we're all here, she said softly, but with spine. Kellen blinked. Just once. His rhythm disrupted. Across the lawn, another officer passed drinks, skipping Evelyn. The omission wasn't random, it was instruction. Moments later, Marcus was pulled off the floor. The venue manager's lips were tight, his eyes avoiding hers. It was clear someone had given the order from above. But Evelyn? She didn't budge, didn't sip the water, didn't blink at the exclusion. She just sat, her silence now louder than anything in the courtyard. What would you do if you were in Evelyn Grace's place? Would you speak up or stay still and let the truth rise? Let us know in the comments and hit like and subscribe if this moment shook you. You've been warned. Now move. Officer Briggs' voice cracked through the courtyard like a gunshot. He circled back to Evelyn Grace with the short, sharp cadence of someone who felt his control slipping. She didn't move. She didn't even blink. So he leaned down and with the back of his hand slapped the water bottle off her lap. It clattered to the stone path, water splashing her dress. The crowd gasped softly. Evelyn flinched, but her eyes never left him. Kellen turned to the watching guests. This woman is refusing lawful instructions and disrupting a private event. Tina looked down at her shoes. Derek gave a hollow nod. They didn't believe him. But the uniform made it hard to say otherwise. Evelyn calmly dabbed her skirt, then looked up with grace that made the moment feel biblical. I didn't come here for a fight, she said. I came to bless a union. She held his gaze. But it seems you're not here to serve the people anymore. Slowly she stood, shaky, deliberate. She walked toward the gate. Whispers stirred. Maybe she was leaving, but halfway there, she paused, turned, and walked back to her seat. Without a word, without fear, more powerful in silence than any man shouting. Enough games, Sergeant Dana growled. He stepped forward, grabbed her arm, tight. Gasps scattered across the lawn. A bridesmaid dropped her bouquet. That's his grandma, someone yelled. Miles stepped forward. You just put hands on a guest! The mood snapped. Something broke, and it wouldn't reset. Evelyn looked up once more. You've done it now, she said quietly. And they're all watching. At the far end of the courtyard, the groom, Jordan, had just arrived. What do you think the protagonist should do next? Should she keep her silence or let the truth shake the room? Let us know in the comments. And if this hit you hard, hit like and subscribe. This, Evelyn said, rising slightly in her seat, her voice calm, sharp as glass, is what happens when arrogance wears a badge. She wasn't addressing the officers anymore. She was speaking to everyone. No yelling, no rage, just truth wrapped in steel. And the silence that followed was louder than any siren. Kellen tried to recover. Lady, you're turning this into something it's not. But the sting was gone from his voice now. The air of authority? Fading fast. Even he heard how unsure he sounded. And the crowd did, too. Eyes that once turned away now leaned in. Phones rose, less discreet this time. A man near the back muttered, "She's someone." A bridesmaid clutched her phone to her chest. She's not just the groom's grandmother. Even guests who once looked bored now stared like history was unfolding before them. Back behind the catering tent, Wesley stepped out from behind the linen table. He pulled a sleek black phone from his pocket. His voice was low, efficient. "To confirm," he said. "Target activated. Situation escalating. Phase 2, pending." He didn't look rushed. He looked ready. Evelyn reached into her purse and unfolded a floral handkerchief. Nestled inside wasn't tissue or perfume. She stopped breathing for a second. Sergeant Dana watched the exchange, his brow tightening. His voice cut through the tension like a rope snapping. "Who are you exactly?" Evelyn didn't answer. She didn't have to. Because suddenly, people weren't looking at the uniforms anymore. They were looking at her. Andre stepped up again, this time to her left. He didn't say much, just enough. "This ends today. We're not backing down anymore." No yelling, no pointing, just presence. And for the first time, Evelyn allowed herself a breath. Someone else had said it out loud. She turned to the courtyard, her voice floating across the heads of the crowd. This moment was never about safety, she said. It was about assumption. And right on cue, a soft wind picked up the edge of her scarf. It wasn't just commentary, it was a verdict. Briggs muttered under his breath, "If you didn't look the way you do." It was barely audible, but not to the phones. Not to the microphones, not to the dozens of digital eyes recording. The reaction was instant. Gasps, side eyes, no more plausible deniability. He'd said the quiet part out loud. A toddler whimpered in the distance, but the rest of the rehearsal courtyard was frozen. Eyes darted, shoulders stiffened. It wasn't about a wedding anymore. It wasn't even about Evelyn. It was about what this moment represented, and no one could unsee it. Evelyn looked straight at Sergeant Dana. She tilted her head just slightly. "You don't know who you just put hands on." Then she leaned forward, soft but surgical. "You'll want to check your emails before this ceremony starts." A moment later, Dana's phone vibrated in his pocket. He didn't move. He didn't look. But his posture shifted, just a fraction. He knew. Something was coming, and it wasn't in his control anymore. What would you do in this situation? Would you stay calm, speak up, or walk away? Comment your thoughts below. And if this story hits, like and subscribe. The real shock is still coming. Everything froze. No music, no chatter, no laughter. Officer Kellen's radio crackled once, then died in a wash of static. He stiffened, eyes darting. A flower girl near the aisle clutched her mother's hand. Somewhere behind the altar, the wind picked up. Leaves rustled against the stained glass window. The entire courtyard held its breath. Near the edge, Wesley lifted a phone to his ear. He didn't speak. He just listened, then began walking, slow, precise, toward the center aisle. From the balcony above, a camera zoomed in, smooth and intentional. Evelyn reached into her purse and placed a folded letter on the table beside her. A blue government seal shimmered along the edge. Sasha saw it and swallowed. Sergeant Dana stepped forward. "Ma'am, what are you doing?" His voice cracked. He already knew. Evelyn turned to the guests. "You'll understand soon enough." Then she looked directly at the camera. "If you think the officers went too far, hit that like button. And if you're ready to see what justice looks like in real time, subscribe now." She hasn't raised her voice once. The whisper rippled through the stunned crowd like a wind beneath stained glass. Elijah leaned toward his wife, clutching her hand. "She's not just a guest. I think she's someone big." At the edge of the courtyard, Wesley moved with quiet purpose, his suit perfectly pressed, his eyes locked only on Evelyn Grace. He stepped forward and opened a sleek black case. Inside, nothing flashy, just a digital ID badge outlined in gold. He held it in front of her with the same reverence most reserved for crowns. Evelyn accepted it without ceremony. Then she placed the badge gently against the reception table. A soft chime sounded. Behind the altar, a screen flickered to life. The footage wasn't from today. It was from the past. Weeks, months, years of it. Officer Kellen yelling at a woman in a parking lot. Briggs shoving a teen onto a sidewalk. Sergeant Dana signing every report, every time. Silence turned to gasps. The audience didn't just witness embarrassment, they witnessed a pattern. And then, from the back of the courtyard, movement. Two figures emerged, suited and still as stone. Director Monroe, Agent Salas. Their presence shifted the air. Even the sun felt sharper. Monroe tapped her mic. "Verification complete. Stand by." Salas's voice carried through the courtyard. "Ladies and gentlemen, you are witnessing a federal ethics investigation in real time." He turned toward the officers. "This woman is not simply a guest. She is a senior inspector general overseeing this district, appointed to monitor and audit officer conduct in high-profile cases." He paused, his tone shifting with quiet gravity. "And today, she is not here in that capacity alone. She is also here for something far more personal, to witness her son, Jordan Grace, get married." Gasps turned into stunned silence. A woman covered her mouth. Someone dropped their glass. And at the end of the aisle, the groom stepped forward, Jordan Grace, not just a man in a fitted suit, but in full tactical uniform. The real authority, the real lead on the case, her son. Sasha, still filming, whispered, "That's why she looked familiar. I've read her reports. I thought she'd retired." But Evelyn Grace hadn't retired. She just went quiet. Until now. "I've been observing this precinct for 6 months, Evelyn said. Her voice didn't rise. It settled. "You failed every test. Every opportunity to be decent." Kellen stumbled back. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't." Dana opened his mouth, but Monroe raised her hand. Silence. She pulled a small folder from her briefcase. "Effective immediately, your credentials are revoked. Step aside." Briggs moved to object, but one look at the screen behind him, and he stopped. The footage didn't lie. Evelyn said nothing more. She simply folded her shawl over her shoulder, stepped forward, and stood tall. Not in authority, but in presence. The room followed her with their eyes, not out of fear, but reverence. Wesley and another federal agent began retrieving devices, body cams, radios, internal logs. The takedown wasn't improvised. It had been built layer by layer. Evelyn turned to Dana. "You never asked who I was," she said. "You just assumed, and you feared what you assumed." Someone clapped, then another. It wasn't applause, it was recognition. "You didn't fail because I was watching," she said to the 3 men now standing alone. "You failed because this is who you are when no one is watching." Andre's eyes welled. He wasn't the only one. Other officers began stepping back from Kellen, Dana, and Briggs. They weren't backing up because they were ordered to. They backed away because it was right. Kellen tried to slip away through the side exit. Salas stepped in front of him. "You are not free to leave." Monroe unfolded a document stamped with a red seal. "All three of you are terminated. Effective immediately." Gasps spread like fire. No one laughed. No one needed to. Salas added, "You will now report to Federal Internal Review for prosecution recommendation." Briggs tried to play it down. "This wasn't personal." "It became personal," Evelyn interrupted, "the moment you laid hands on me in public." Then she turned to the guests. She didn't gloat. She didn't celebrate. She simply said, "Thank you for seeing and for remembering." She looked to Wesley. He nodded once. The mission was complete. As she walked down the aisle, the screen behind her changed once more. U.S. Office of Inspector General, Senior Investigator Evelyn M. Grace. And just like that, they finally knew her name. Do you think the officers deserve forgiveness, or should they face full consequences? Let us know in the comments. And if you felt that shift in your chest, hit like and subscribe. The final chapter gives you the justice ripple you didn't see coming. The courtyard had quieted, but its echo lingered in every soul still standing. Evelyn Grace walked with her usual poise, slow, certain, as if time bowed for her now. Near the exit, a young woman stepped forward. Jasmine. She had watched the whole thing in silence, frozen by uncertainty. But now she found her voice. "I've never seen someone shut down hate without ever raising theirs," she said. Evelyn met her eyes. Didn't speak. She just nodded, and that silence said everything. By nightfall, the footage had spread like light breaking a storm. No shouting, no dramatics, just titles. She never yelled. She never had to. She changed everything. In a quiet interview days later, Evelyn sat calmly across from a stunned anchor. "I didn't come to fight," she said. "I came to remind them, power doesn't excuse disrespect. Respect isn't optional. It's owed." Months later, at a community seminar in a modest city hall, Sergeant Dana sat alone in the back row. No badge, no defense, just listening. Not forgiven, but changed. Evelyn returned to her office. A sealed folder sat waiting. Oversight Phase 2. Institutional Reform Directive. She smiled. As she shut the door behind her, her voice lingered. "They tried to define me by what I look like, but they'll remember me for what I never had to say." If you believe silence can still change a room, if you believe quiet strength is real strength, like this video and share it. And in the comments, let us know, should the officers be redeemed or remembered for what they did?